Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, all to Hyderabad, our platform user group. This is our May Meetup, and today we have two sessions that we are going to have as part of our meetup today. The first one is by Leon Gordon. He is a Microsoft MVP, and today he is going to talk about introduction to machine learning in Power BI. Then, our second topic for the day is develop a student management system from scratch using Power Apps, Power Automate, and SharePoint. And that is going to be presented by Sumaira Noor. And she is a community expert who is going to share a live demo on how to build a student management system. So, with that, welcome to Hyderabad Power Platform User Group, Leon. We are so excited to have you here today with us.
Thank you, Ritika. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you all today.
Okay, thank you. So, the floor is all yours. I have added your screen share to the stream, so you can get started now. If you want.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. As I say, absolute pleasure to be here with you all today. In today's session, we're going to be taking a look at an introduction to machine learning in Power BI. As Ritika mentioned at the top end of the show, my name's Leon Gordon. I'm a current Microsoft Data Platform MVP. And feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn and follow my activity there. Sorry, let me just jump back and follow my activity there. And also you can take a look at the Onyx Data website, which is onyxdata.co.uk. I'm also the founder and chair of the Microsoft Power BI UK user group and the Data DNA dataset visualization group, which is a weekly dataset challenge whereby this month you can win up to $300 of Amazon vouchers by participating. So please do join me there on LinkedIn. So with that being said, what will we cover in today's session? Well, first and foremost, we'll take a look at what is machine learning, often referred to as ML. Then we'll take a look at how we can benefit from machine learning within Power BI. We'll also take a look at how to create a machine learning model in Power BI Premium or Premium per user, often referred to as PPU. We'll then take a look at how to create a machine learning model in Power BI for free. And at the end of the session, I'll give you some resources to continue learning. Now, with that being said, we're going to take a look at a lot of technical aspects in today's session. We're going to cover a lot in a short period of time. So with that being said, we may gloss over some of the more technical aspects as this is an introductory session and more of an insight of how to give you how to do this type of machine learning within Power BI. So moving on, first and foremost, what is machine learning? Well, machine learning is a branch of artificial intelligence, often referred to as AI, that teaches computers to do what comes naturally to humans and animals, which is to learn from experience. Machine learning algorithms use computational methods to learn information directly from data without relying on a predetermined equation as a model. So the key takeaways from this slide is that we're looking to make the computer learn from experience, and to do this by learning information directly from the data. So we're going to take a look at how we can benefit from machine learning within Power BI, first and foremost using Power BI Premium or Premium per user. So we can take a look at real-time predictions like customer churn analysis, customer leads and conversion, and also looking to predict fraud. In today's webinar, we're going to take a look at a business use case, which is customer leads and conversion. So we have a fictional sales organization that currently has a £3 million spent on leads. Now, with this being said, their conversion rate is quite low in the fact that it's 4.3%, their conversion rate. So as you can imagine, this sales company is spending a large amount of money, £3 million in this instance, per year on purchasing leads. Now, the leads move down through the sales funnel from going from a lead to a sales call to a follow-up to a conversion, and ultimately, hopefully ending in a sale, of which at the moment we can see that only 4.3% of all leads purchased are resulting in a sale. So a relatively low conversion rate. Now, wouldn't it be great if upfront we can actually qualify leads to say which leads would be most likely to actually convert into a sale for us? So with this use case, we're looking to minimize lead spend. So if we can actually predict which leads will convert for us, we can only purchase those leads. Also, we would enable the business to see a higher conversion rate because the emphasis would be that these leads are more likely to convert. So with this being said, in our fictional organization, let's jump into our demonstration and start to take a look at some of the data. Okay. Just move over into our GitHub environment, and I will share the links so you can follow through with this as well after the session. So first and foremost, in our GitHub environment, we're going to take a look at some of our prospective buyer data. So this is our lead data that we purchase, which is part of that £3 million lead spend. Okay. So with that being said, we can see that this comes from a transactional system, as it has a prospective buyer key, an alternate key. And in this instance, we also have a first name, a last name, an age, a marital status, a gender, a yearly income, the total amount of children that they have, and the number of those children of which are still at home, the education of the lead, the occupation, whether or not they're a house owner, the number of cars they own, the city that they live in, the state and province code, the postal code, and that is the information we have available to us as a lead comes in. Now, we also have, in this instance, a historic data set that we're going to use to train our machine learning model. So within this historic data set, I'll just open up in a new tab. This information has leads that we have already contacted previously. Now, as these leads went through our sales funnel, ultimately, we understood whether they became a buyer or not. So what you can see here is that we have common attributes between the two files. So we have the lead's age, marital status, the gender, their yearly income, the total amount of children, the number of children at home, their education, their occupation, whether or not they're a homeowner or not, the number of cars they own, their state province code, their postal code. And as I mentioned, as this is historic customer data, we also have an additional column here, which is a buyer flag, which indicates whether or not the individual became a buyer with us or not. So as I mentioned, we're going to use this sales training data to train a machine learning model to enable us to be able to predict our leads as they come in. So with that being said, let's move into our Power BI workspace. And for this, I have a Sandbox Premium per user workspace that we're going to use for this demo. Okay, so we're just going to open that. Now, when you move into your Sandbox workspace, we want to start off by creating a new data flow. Okay, in my instance, I have to press this a couple of times. Hopefully for you, if you are following along, it will click for you first time round. So with that being said, we're going to be presented with a nice UI wizard so we can start creating our data flow. Now, to do this, what we want to do is define a new table. So we're going to do this by selecting Add New Tables. Okay. Now, once we've selected Add New Tables, we will enter into Power Query Online. Now, this allows us to choose our data source and our connection method. So in this example, we're going to use a text.csv data source. And to do this, we're going to actually have to set up our connection settings. So let's go back to, first and foremost, our sales training CSV. We want to go across and get the raw version of this URL by selecting raw. And then we're just going to copy out that URL there, go back into our Power Query Online window, and just paste that file path or URL into the connection settings. We can go ahead and select Next. And in the background, Power Query Online will start to parse that file. It will actually do a preview of the first 200 rows and select, as we can see here, the data types for each of those columns. In this instance, it's also identified that our first row of this data set is actually headers, and it's put there as headers for us as well. So we can move forward to going into transform data. And as I mentioned, as Power Query Online has correctly defined our data types and also that our first row is headers, we don't need to make any additional transformations here. So we can go ahead and save and close. Now, once we save and close, again, we'll be presented with a screen that allows us to save our data flow. And for the purposes of this demonstration, we're going to call it ML_Hyderabad. And generally, in this instance, you would give a description. So there may be other developers like yourself that are using this in the future, and there may even be business users that are using your data flow. So it's always best practice to give yourself a description here. So for the purposes, I'm going to give a very short description, which is ingesting data sets for ML model. Okay, let's go ahead and select save. And then we'll be asked, oh, actually, this name already exists. Okay, let's go with _1. Once we save that, as we can see, we're asked if we want to. Okay, maybe it did save for us the first time around then. Let's just take a quick look at that and make sure it is saved. Yep, it looks like we can continue. Actually, I don't think we have called one like this before. So let's go again with ML_model1. Again, let's have our description, which is ingesting dataset for ML model. And let's go ahead and select save. Okay, the demo gods are not being kind to me this morning. So what I'm going to do is let's just reverse out of here, go back to our sandbox. Don't save. Oh, fantastic. Okay, let's revert all the way back out of here then. Apologies for this. I'm not too sure why that wouldn't save in the service this time around. But the demo gods always try to get us, especially on a Saturday. So let's just jump back into that workspace. I'm going to take a quick look at that data flow that looks like it has been created. And I'm hoping that this is just a glitch for the service as of this morning, which it looks to be. So we can continue from the same step. What we want to do next, so we have our sales training data within our data flow now. What we want to do is actually add our lead data. So let's go ahead and select Add Tables. And again, we'll be presented with the now familiar data source screen within Power Query Online, where we can select our text CSV data source. We can go back over to our GitHub repo, where we have our prospective buyer CSV. And in the same manner, we can get the raw version of this, which gives us a nice handy URL that we can utilize directly into our data source. Copy and paste that into our file path or URL and go ahead and select next. Now, once again, Power Query Online will pass this file and preview the data based on the first 200 rows, again, correctly defining our data types that we can see here, and also identifying that our first row is in fact a column header. So once again, let's select transform data. Again, we don't need to add any transformations here. Everything has been correctly defined, and we can go ahead and save and close. Okay. So again, we'll be asked if we want to refresh our data flow, which for the purposes of today's model, we don't want to refresh now, and we also don't want to set a refresh schedule. So fantastic. We now have our sales training and our prospective buyer data within our data flow. So let's go ahead and move on to creating a machine learning model, which we can see here on our menu. So by selecting machine learning models, we're going to get a nice UI wizard that's going to walk us through what we'll be doing. So in the first instance, we'll be creating and training our model. So by doing this, we're going to select our training data. We're going to choose a model type. We're then going to train our model. And secondly, we'll move on to improving our model. So this is by iterating and retraining on the underlying data set. And finally, we'll look to apply our model to our lead data so we can have predictive insights on whether or not these leads will become buyers for us. So let's go ahead and get started. So first and foremost, we're going to be presented with a screen that asks us what we want to predict. Now, as I mentioned in our synopsis at the top end of the session, we want to predict whether or not a lead will become a buyer for us. So to do this, let's go ahead and choose our table, which in this instance, we're using our training data. So we want to use our sales training table. And the column that we're interested in, as we mentioned previously, is our buyer column. Okay. So let's go ahead and select next. In the background, once again, Power BI in the service is just going to pass that data, and we can see that we're now looking to choose a model. Now here we can see that Power BI has defined this model as a binary prediction model. So this is predicting whether or not an outcome will be achieved. And examples of using this is for determining the likelihood of a sales lead converting or the probability of a customer responding to a marketing campaign. So we can see here that Power BI has successfully suggested the right model for us to use for today's session. Now, if it hadn't, we can click here, which will enable us to select a different model. So by clicking here, we can see that we're actually presented with either classification or regression models. Now, first and foremost, we can see our binary prediction, which again, Power BI has already successfully recommended to us as the right model. But if it wasn't, we also have general classification, which is utilized to distinguish between 3 or more outcomes. Now, examples of using this include classifying credit card applicants into groups of those who have good credit, bad credit, and potentially those that require a little bit of further analysis. We also have regression. Now, a regression model can be used to estimate a numeric value and is generally used for estimating house prices in a market based on regional factors. But as I previously mentioned, the actual model we want today is a classification model and a binary prediction model. So let's go ahead and select that. Now we want to choose a target outcome. So as we mentioned, we're interested in when the buyer flag is set to true, when the individual did become a buyer. So let's go ahead and set that to true. Once we have a prediction, we now can select how we want to label that within the report. So if we get a match, let's call it a buyer. And if we don't get the correct prediction, let's call it not buyer. Okay, so we've then chosen our model, chosen our target outcome, and defined how we're going to label those predictions also. Let's go ahead and select next. And we're going to start to take a look at the data that we actually want to study now. So based on a sample of data, once again, Power BI in the background will go away and pass that information and return to us the columns that it feels has a high correlation with the outcome of a buyer being true. And also it will present back to us the areas that it feels has a low correlation with the buyer being true. So in this instance, Power BI is recommending that we use age, yearly income, the total amount of children, whether we have a house or not, and the postal code as attributes that can be utilized for our machine learning model to predict. Now, it's worthwhile knowing that that in the ML world, these attributes are commonly referred to as features. And for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to go against Power BI's recommendation here and go ahead and select the majority of these columns anyway, as I want to show you how this correlation actually looks when we get into some reporting slightly later on. So let's go ahead and select next. And now we can give our model a name and a description and then look to train our model. So for the purposes of this, I'm going to stay away potentially from names that we've already used, and let's just go for ML_ML demo. And in this description, again, let's give our model a description to help out anybody that will be using this in the future. And for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to say the model is to classify leads as buyers. Okay. Now, what we can do here as well is define a training time. Now, I don't know about yourselves, but for myself personally, the longer the amount of time that I spend training or practicing on something, generally the better I get. And it's very much the same for machine learning models. The longer we train the model, the more accurate the results will be. So bear this in mind when you're actually setting your training time. We can go from anything from 5 minutes up to 360 minutes within the Power BI service. Again, for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and select 5 minutes, or else this will be running for the majority of the rest of the day, which is not something we want. Okay, so once we've set our training time, well, what will happen next? So as it mentions here, in the background, we're going to take 80% worth of our training data, and we're going to iterate over that data, running our predictions and identifying patterns, and then we're going to test those predictions on the remaining 20% of the data. Okay, so let's go ahead and select Save and Train. Now, once we've selected Save and Train, we can see that we're presented back to our data sets and data flow screen, and our ML_Hyderabad data flow is now refreshing that we can see here. Now, in the background, that will go ahead and run. And in an effort to maintain pace for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to go on to a previously deployed version of this data flow and pick up from where we left off. So with that being said, once you've refreshed your data flow and run your machine learning model predictions, you'll be presented back to this screen, whereby we now have access to our training report. So by clicking on our training report, we can go in and start to see the underlying detail in terms of how our model was trained. So we'll just bear with us while this just loads. And now this will start to give us a lot of insight into how our model performed, how accurate the model has been, and also give us details around that training as well. So first and foremost, let's start off on our model performance tab. So firstly, we can see how the model was evaluated. Now, as I mentioned previously, the model was taken with a test set of records, so that's 1,563, and used those to compare the outcomes. We also have our model performance, which is our AUC, or area under the curve, which has been observed in this test. And again, it's probably worthwhile noting that this is probably reserved for more of an intermediate talk as opposed to an introduction in terms of the definitions of AUC. Now we can start to see our top predictors here also. So if we click see top predictors, then as I mentioned to you, Power BI in the background, when we selected our features or attributes, actually didn't recommend that we select some of these values because they had a low correlation with if our lead was going to be a buyer. So I selected those anyway, just so you can see here that they actually appear very low on their influence in terms of the definition of what a buyer should be from our leads. So Power BI was correct in its suggestion. Now, with that being said, we can see that our top predictors by influence are age and marital status, and also to a certain extent the total amount of children. So if we go ahead and select our age bar, we'll be presented with a bit more of a deep dive on the right-hand side, which gives us a percentage of buyer records for each feature value. So we can start to see patterns appearing. So generally, an individual that buys with us is going to be 46 and less, or between 46 and 59 years old. Moving forward, we can see that their marital status is generally going to be single, and the total amount of children at home is going to be 1. Okay, so we're starting to see patterns emerge that we can use for our predictions. So let's go ahead and close this now. And then we can start to see what's called a confusion matrix. And before we go into this in a bit of detail, let me just grab an image that will give us a bit more context around a confusion matrix. So let's go with this one here. Okay, so when we're looking at a confusion matrix, we see here that we have our predicted values. So in the top left, we get a true positive. So this is a prediction that's been predicted correctly as being positive. And in the bottom right here, we can see a prediction which has been predicted negative, and it's actually negative. So what we're looking for in the grid that I'll move on to in a moment is for these two values to be correct. This means that our machine learning model is correctly predicting when we have a lead that is a buyer and when we have a lead that's not a buyer. And we want these two values here, so our false negative and our false positive. This is when our machine learning model predictions is not right. So it's a false negative and it's a false positive. So with that being said, let's just move back to our confusion matrix here. And we can see that it's actually performing quite well in terms of predicting buyers which are actual buyers. It's not performing well at all in terms of our predicting buyers which are which are actually not buyers. And we can actually see here that our false negative here as well isn't great in this example. So what we have are two values. Now this is precision and recall. Now again, I'm not going to go into too much detail in terms of the definitions of precision and recall for this introductory session, but what we can do here is we can increase our recall and increase our precision. Now if we just was to move our value further to the increase precision side, we can see that it now has an effect on our confusion matrix. We've seen a lot more positive predictions for where the individual is not a buyer. We've also seen our predictions of actual buyers has fallen as well. So for the purposes of today's session, I'm going to set this in to be about halfway, which is around 0.5. And again, we can see that our confusion matrix now has a slightly more even distribution across the correct predictions of buyers and the correct predictions of non-buyers as well. So with that being said, again, utilizing cost-benefit analysis generally comes around in our intermediate session, which hopefully I'll be invited back for in the future. And we can go into the next element of our report, which is our accuracy report. We'll just go back up to the top, and we can see that now we're starting to look at the accuracy of our model predictions. We can see, as I mentioned previously, that we have about a 79% of an area under the ROC curve, and we can go down into a bit more detail. Now, again, for the purpose of this session, I'm going to gloss over a bit of the detail and just highlight the fact that what we have in this visualization here is our teal color. So this is our line on the leftmost side, is what would be our ideal. So this would be our ideal prediction from the model, is on the left hand side. And what we have on the right hand side here, which is our black dotted line, would be a random guess. So this is when when our model doesn't hold the information it needs and just takes a random guess at what it's predicting. Now, as we can see through our yellow line here, which is our model, is that we're sitting relatively in the middle, okay, of what is the ideal and a random guess. So it's not performing too badly. Now, as we go on to our training details tab and just scroll back up to the top, now this starts to give us some information on how our model was trained. So it lets us know the amount of sampled rows that we used to actually to run the iterations on and predict on and train. And then we had our training rows as well. We can actually see here the amount of iterations that were run, and we also get to find out the final model that was being used, which in this example was a pre-fitted soft voting classifier. We scroll down and we can see how the model quality performed over each of its iterations. And then we go into a bit more detail around our data featureization. So this is our features or attributes that we used and their data types. And then we also get a bit more information around the threshold and the amount of models that we utilized in training our model. So if we were happy with this performance based on our report, we could go ahead and select Apply Model. At which point we will be presented with what we want to apply our model to. Now, we know we want to apply our model to our prospective buyer, which is our lead information. So at this point, we're taking our leads and we're applying our predictions to our lead data. So let's go ahead and select prospective buyer. Let's go with outcome as our output column name, and as mentioned, we've set our threshold between precision and recall at 0.5. Now, if you are following along with this, you can hit save and apply. As I mentioned, this is a previously developed version of this data flow, so I'm going to select cancel, as by hitting save and apply, it will go ahead and start running the predictions in the background, which does take a little bit of time. Okay, so once you've applied that machine learning model, we can go back to our tables element. And we're now presented with 4 new tables, okay? So we have our buyer prediction training data, which is the data that we use to train our machine learning model. We have our buyer prediction testing data, which is the data that we use to test those predictions on. And the table that we're most interested in is our prospective buyer enriched buyer prediction data, okay? So this is our data once we've actually applied the machine learning model to our leads, and we now have a prediction on whether or not that lead will convert or not. So our work in the Power BI service is now done. So let's go ahead and open up Power BI, okay, in which we're presented with a nice wizard. And let's go ahead and select Get Data, okay. So at this point, we've run our machine learning model. We've correctly classified our leads and run our predictions against our lead data. And we can now start to report on it and look to distribute that data, either for reporting purposes or out to our sales team as well. So hopefully momentarily we'll be presented with our Get Data screen, which we are. And we can go ahead and search for data flows as we're looking to access the data flow that now holds our enriched tables. So let's go ahead and select Power BI data flows, and we're going to connect. Okay, so it's going to establish a connection, and we'll be able to select our workspace before moving down to our data flows as well. So this is our sandbox workspace. Now you're going to see all of our data flows there. The one that we're interested in at the moment is the ML webinar deployed. Okay. Now we can open up that data flow, and as I mentioned, the table that we're now interested in is our prospective buyer enriched with our buyer prediction data. So let's go ahead and select. We'll get a preview of that data. We don't need to make any transformations. Actually, let's go into transformation so I can show you a couple of additional columns before we load the data. So by selecting transform data, we'll be presented with our Power Query screen from within Power BI desktop, whereby if we wanted to apply any transformations to the data, we could. You'll see that this is actually our lead data because we have our prospective buyer key, our alternate key, our first name, our last name, all of our common attributes. But if we just scroll to the right-hand side, you'll see that we now have some additional columns that actually have the buyer prediction dot prefix as well. So we have our outcome column, which is our prediction. So this is the prediction from the machine learning model on whether or not this lead will be a buyer for us or not. We have a score, which is a weighting behind that prediction. So if the prediction has a higher score, it's a more likelihood that it's actually a correct prediction. And then we have two additional columns, one being an explanation of why the model predicted the outcome it has, and also an index of those explanations as well. So these two columns here are generally not used for reporting purposes. The ones that we're most interested in is these additional columns, which is the outcome and the prediction score. So let's go ahead and select close and apply so that we can load our data. So once again, Power BI will just preview that data, evaluate it, and load it into our model. Okay, so once that's done, we'll be able to start to visualize and filter our data as well. Okay, the data set isn't large, so this should only take a couple of moments. Okay, so now that that's successfully ran, let's go ahead and open up our fields. And for the purposes of this demonstration, let's go ahead and select first name and last name. And let's select our outcome and our prediction score. Okay, we're just going to select these into a rudimentary table. Just expand this slightly so we can see the information. Okay, and actually I'm also going to add a rudimentary slicer here, which is going to be for our outcome as well. Okay, so now we can see all of our lead data. And if we want to just demonstrate those that were predicted to be buyers, we can select true here. And then we can also look to sort our data with those that have the highest likelihood based on their score to be a buyer with us. Alternatively, we can also now filter these values. So we have those that are less likely to be a buyer with us, and we can sort this as well so that we can see those that actually have the highest likelihood to be not buyers with us. So straight away, we have now classified our leads, which will enable us to filter out the leads that we don't want, and also to have those leads that have a high likelihood of converting for us. So with that being said, we have now applied a classification model to our data, and we can go ahead and present this back to our sales team, or alternatively, we can actually give some of these leads back and not purchase them at all. So ultimately, this will enable us to cut down on lead spend and also increase our conversion rate based on those predictions. So this is fantastic. We've now done that on Power BI Premium or Premium per user, but how can we do this if we don't have Power BI Premium or Premium per user? Well, we can do this in Pro and Power BI Desktop for free. So let's go ahead and we're going to make the machine learn again. Even though this robot does not look happy, believe me, no machines were harmed in the making of this webinar. So to do this, it's worthwhile noting that there are a couple of limitations to this approach. So you can't use machine learning ops or ML ops for this approach. You can only use the personal gateway. It's quite difficult to manage dependencies as well with this approach, and it's not scalable in this instance. Generally, again, in our intermediate session, we look at how you can do this with AutoML as well, but there is a slight cost involved in that. So for us to do this way, we need to actually use some alternative tools. So one of those tools is Anaconda. Now, Anaconda is a Python and R data science distribution that allows you to create data science environments locally for free. We also going to use PyCaret. Now, PyCaret is an open source, low-code machine learning library in Python that allows us to start to develop these machine learning models using Python script. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into our second demo. So again, if you are following on, we do need to go, first and foremost, you may need to go ahead and get the Microsoft C++ build tools. You can download these from visualstudio.microsoft.com. And again, I'll make the link available after this session. Excuse me. And you can also download Anaconda. So you need to download the Anaconda individual edition, which is a free distribution to download and install on your machine. So once you've done those two tasks, you can go ahead and just search on your system for Anaconda. And in this instance, we want to use the Anaconda prompt. Again, this is quite a technical demo, so we're going to gloss over a lot of the intricacies of the scripts that we go into and just show you how you can do this on your end as well. So once you open the Anaconda command prompt, you'll be in your base environment. And what we want to do is create a unique environment or a container whereby we have all of our Python directories installed. So to do this, we want to use the activate command. Oh, sorry. Let's click here again. We want to use the activate command. And for this example, I'm going to use an environment called data science _ UG. This can be a name of your choice. And once you do that, it's going to create you a new environment that we can then start to build up our packages in. So we can now see we've changed over to our data science _ UG environment. Okay, so what we want to do is use the conda command to install pip. Now, for those of you that are not familiar, pip is Python's package manager, and it will enable us to install the PyCaret libraries as well. So once you've done this, pip will go ahead and install in the background. It looks like there's an update on this system for pip. So it's going to go ahead and just install the update from our perspective. A lot of these tools are already installed on this system, so it should go through relatively quickly. And again, this may take some time on your machine if you're following along at home. But once that's been completed, we now have pip, and we can use the pip package manager, so the pip command, to install PyCaret. Okay, so once you've typed that, it will go ahead and install the PyCaret module. As I mentioned, on this system, we already have PyCaret installed. So it's already, all of the requirements are already satisfied. It might take a little bit longer on your side. So once you've completed those tasks, you now have an environment which is set up with Python and PyCaret, and we can start to utilize this in Power BI. So first and foremost, we need to make Power BI aware that we have a Python environment. So let's go ahead and select new to open up a new Power BI report. So as I mentioned, we have our Python environment, which we've created, but Power BI is not aware of this as of yet. So we want to go over into our options. So we'll just close down our splash screen. Let's go over into File. And we want to go into our options and settings. and we want to go to options. And this will allow us to select our environment. We can go to Python scripting. And in detected Python home directories, we want to select other, and then we want to browse to our Anaconda installed, whereby we can go to our environments. And in this example, I'm using the data science _UG environment that we previously created. Once you've set those values, you can go ahead and select OK, and Power BI will now be ready for Python scripting. So fantastic. What we need to do first and foremost is go ahead and get our data so that we can recreate what we did in the Power BI service. So one key difference here is that rather than using text CSV, we're actually going to use the web connector. We're going to go back over to our GitHub repo. We're going to get both URLs that we require. Sorry, let me just grab all of that. Come back into from the web and paste our URL. So this is our prospective buyer, our lead data. We'll go ahead and select OK. And then what I'll do for the purposes of this demo, I'm just going to show you a couple of differences that you get in Power BI Desktop against the Power Query Online before I'll moving to a previously created version of this file so that we can run through it at a bit of pace because I'm conscious of time. So key points to be aware of here is that Power Query Desktop doesn't correctly assess that the first row is headers, and it doesn't apply this to this data set. So we do have to make a couple of transformations. So we need to first and foremost use our first row as headers. Okay. So we can now see that our first row is headers, and we need to change some of our data types across the whole data set. Now I'm only going to do a couple here. Like I say, for the rest of those, you would need to change those data types as well. So similarly, we have to go and do the same for our historical, so our sales training data. We're going to go ahead and select the web connector, head back over to our GitHub repo, grab the raw URL and go ahead and paste that into our URL, select OK, and then very much the same again. Power Query Desktop will not correctly define our first row as headers, so let's go ahead and select OK. So we would have to use first row as headers, and also again we would have to go ahead and define our data types that we need. So as I mentioned, I'm not going to continue this from a fresh Power BI file. I'm actually going to load one of our previously deployed versions, as I'm aware we're getting quite close to time, and I want to have some time for any questions you may have as well. So let's go ahead and select our demo here. Now I'll pick this up from exactly where we just left off. So you may recall that we have our data loaded into our Power BI desktop file. So we now have our sales training data and our lead data. Now what we want to start to do is first and foremost follow the process that we had when we did this in Power BI Premium and Premium per user, which is to firstly train our machine learning model. And then we want to apply this machine learning model to our lead data as it comes through also. And we're going to do this by utilizing a set of Python scripts, which I have made available in the GitHub repo. You can follow these through. They're labeled 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'm just going to open each of these in a new tab. So that it should be quite easy to follow along with. Okay. So with that being said, we now have our previously deployed file. I'm just going to jump back into Power Query by going to edit the query. And first and foremost, I'm going to show you how we train our machine learning model within Power Query using Python scripts. So to do that, let's go over to our sales training data. Now we can see we have some additional steps applied here, but we're going to pick it up from changing the type. Okay, so first and foremost, once you have changed your data set type, we want to go to transform, and then we'll be able to run our Python script. Okay, so when you select run Python script, you will be greeted with this little screen that appears here. So once we get to here, we can go back to our GitHub repo, and we want to get our first script, which is impute the data set for ML. Okay, you can go ahead, get the raw version of this script, select it all, copy, and we're going to just paste this into this window here. Now, what this script is actually doing is it's mapping all of our categorical features to values that can be used within our PyCaret library. So to do this, we actually have to encode these values to numerical values. So we can see this here. Once this script is actually finished, we can go on to our next step, which is df_imputed. Now, generally, when you apply this on your own system, this may take some time to run, because if you remember, we're actually starting to apply our machine learning model to our data set. So we can see the imputation here in the encoding of values, particularly here with gender. So if you imagine gender in this data set has two values, male and female, we can now see that these have been defined as 1.0 and 0.0. Similarly, for marital status, again, in our data set, this had two values, which was either married or single. Again, these have been encoded to be mapped to two different values, 1.0 and 0.0, which is really key in terms of us being able to apply our model. So once we've done this, we can go ahead and select Run Python script again, whereby we'll be greeted with another screen. And again, you can just go over to our GitHub, into our second script, go to the raw version of this script, select it all, copy this all, and then copy this into what would be an empty screen here. Now, what this script is actually doing is applying, training our model. Okay, so similarly to what we did in the Power BI service, it's going to go away and use a test and training set of data to go ahead and apply those binary classifications and start to run predictions and train the model in the background. Now, again, once you do this, this will take some time to run, especially if you're running it for the first time. But once that's completed, you'll be presented back with a data set which has its predictions applied to that data set. Okay, so those predictions will be based on the machine learning model having run, trained, and iterated, and then being able to have those predictions available. And they should become available as an additional column. Hopefully this only takes a few moments within this preview, as this was run some time ago. Okay. But once we have those predictions available based on those scripts, it will actually be presented so slightly differently. It'll be presented to us within our sales training table here, and we actually can save that out, which is done as part of the scripts to be used against our prospective buyer data as well. I'll give this a slight moment longer to run the preview. If not, I'll move on to how we start to apply this machine learning model to our prospective buyer data, because I'm slightly conscious of time. Okay, that is going to take slightly longer than we want it to, so let's go ahead and move on to our prospective buyer data. So again, in this version, we would have ingested our prospective buyer, so our lead data, and we're at the stage where we've promoted our headers. So I'll use our first row as headers. So what we want to do then is run a Python script. Now, very similarly to what we did with our lead data, is we need to encode our values, okay? So again, for us to be able to use machine learning against this data set, we need to encode our categorical values. So to do this, we want our third script. We want to copy the raw version of that script out, head back over to our Python script, paste this in, and then we'll be presented with all of the data frames from that script. The one we want is our imputed data frame, so go ahead and expand the table by selecting table here, and we'll be presented with the now familiar imputed value. And you can see that, again, what it does is for our categories, it starts to apply mappings for them. So again, marital status, we can see here has 0.0 or 1.0 to represent married and single, and similarly for gender. So once we have the data in this form, we can now go ahead and run another Python script. Now, this Python script that we're going to run is the smallest, but arguably the one that we're interested in the most. So let's go ahead and just get the raw version of that script, copy that out, and paste this in. And what this is going to do is apply our machine learning model to our lead data. So we're now going to get our predictions back from our lead data. So go ahead and press OK. You can expand your predictions table, as this is the table we're interested in. And then when we go to our data set, we can see that it's our lead data. And if we scroll to the end, we can now see that we have our additional columns. So we have our label, which is our outcome, whether this individual is predicted to be a buyer or not. And additionally, we have our score. Now, the score is the accuracy of that prediction. Now, for the purposes of this demo, you can see here that we've actually lost our first and last name because they've been encoded. So I've just set a reference table from a prospective buyer back to our prospective buyer using the key so that I can actually present to you the first and the last name correctly. So if you are following along, just go ahead and close and apply. I'm just going to close that so it doesn't load the data again. And then if we just jump back to our demo, I'm just going to close these so that we can load them again. As I mentioned, we want to get our prospective buyer first and last name from our reference table because they have the actual values. And we want to get our label and our score from our lead table. And also, let's go ahead and recreate our rudimentary filter using our label. So again, we can start to define whether we want our predictions that are going to be true, and we can set this so that the more accurate predictions are at the top. And similarly, we can also filter out those that we feel are not going to become buyers for us. And this is how you do this process within Power BI Desktop or Power BI Pro without the use of Premium, but using Python as a tool. So with that being said, we now have a vision. So how can we take that to a new level? Well, we can use PyCarrot to do outlier detection, topic distribution, association rule mining, and other elements as well. So now that we have this environment set up and created, we can go on and start to use Python with our data. So as I mentioned before, I will give you some more resources that you can use to continue your learning. So fellow MVP and good friend Luca Zavarella has a fantastic book called Extending Power BI using Python and R, which I would recommend. KD Nuggets is a very informational website that you can use for all things data science. We also have towardsdatascience.com, again, which I would recommend for all things data science. And also we have the anaconda.com website where you can go and get the Anaconda distribution, and they have FAQs there. And also we have documents from Microsoft. So on the Microsoft site, you can go ahead and look through further documentation there. So with that being said, I'll just close my session now for any questions.
So Leon, thank you so much for sharing all this information with us. Honestly, this was something very new for me also, so I enjoyed it a lot. Regarding the questions, we do have one question on the chat. It is it possible to get real-time machine learning prediction with AutoML in Power BI as a data source?
Yes. So to do that, we would use, as the question mentions, we would use AutoML and a slightly more complex system and architecture to be able to enable that. But the answer is yes.
Okay. And if you can also share the resources you shared on the screen earlier, I'll add it to the chat for everybody.
Fantastic, thank you. And I know that we cover quite a large amount of information in the session, but it's really key to give both perspectives in the fact that we can do this in Power BI Premium or Premium per user, but we can also do this in Power BI Desktop or Power BI Pro.
Yes, that was a part I found interesting with the additional tools, and with Python and everything, you can do stuff with whatever license you have.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, Leon. So I don't see any other questions on the chat, but attendees, if you have any questions for Leon, please drop a message on the chat. I'll read out to him. Otherwise, I have shared the LinkedIn URL for him on the chat earlier. So if you want, you can connect with him directly. And in case there are any questions, you can have Leon, directly answer those to you.
Yeah, definitely. Please do feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. And thank you very much again, Ritika, for having me today. Absolutely amazing session. I'm really happy to have been with you all.
Same here. Thank you, Leon.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Okay, so everybody, that was Leon Gordon, and we talked about how to use machine learning in Power BI. Now, our next session is by Sumaira Noor, and she is going to talk about how you can develop a student management system from scratch using Power Apps, Power Automate, and SharePoint. So, hey Sumaira, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi Ritika. Can am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you. First of all,
Okay.
welcome to Hyderabad Power Platform User Group. And we are so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Ritika. Thank you, Yash, for having me here.
Okay, so Sumaira, if you want to share your screen now and start with your session, uh,
Yeah.
I'll just add it to the stream.
Okay. I hope the screen is visible.
Yes, it is. Please continue.
Okay. So, hello everyone, and welcome to Hyderabad Power Platform User Group. And today I'm going to show you how you can build a Power App and a Power Automate flow from scratch. My name is Sumaira Noor, and I'm a Microsoft certified professional. I majorly work on various Power Platform products, and I work at RLE India Private Limited. I love to share my knowledge on my personal blog, and you can also find my LinkedIn handle and my personal blog link on the screen. And the agenda for today is first we will go through the introduction to Microsoft Power Platform, and then we will see its key products, and then I'll share few details about SharePoint, and we can see how we can build a Power Apps and Power Automate from scratch, and then I'll provide you some resources for learning. So, coming to the very first thing, Microsoft Power Platform um, is a platform which empowers everyone within the organization with an extensible platform of low-code tools to stay agile and build efficient and flexible solutions. And Microsoft has also developed a PowerFX low-code programming language for expressing logic across Power Platform. The key products of Power Platform are Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, and Power Virtual Agents. So, under Power Apps, we have Canvas apps, Dataverse, portals, and model driven apps. Power Apps provides a rapid low code development environment for building custom apps according to the business needs. And Power Automate actually allows users to create automated workflows between applications and services. Power BI is a business analytics service that delivers insight for analyzing the data, and Power Virtual Agents allows users to create powerful chatbots using guided no-code graphical interface. We can also call backend systems to perform operations using Power Automate within Power Virtual Agents. So coming to Canvas apps, today we are going to mainly develop the Canvas apps and a Power Automate flow. And Canvas apps actually allows us to design and build business apps from a canvas in Microsoft Power Apps Studio without writing code in traditional programming languages such as C Sharp. We can simply drag and drop elements onto the canvas for a good interface, and Excel like expressions are created for specifying logic and working with data. So yeah, I have a very simple schema for this student management system, where we will be having the department and student list. Before that, coming to SharePoint, it is actually a collaborative platform where we can store the data and we can store our documents. So we will be creating our first SharePoint site here in the SharePoint. SharePoint actually. Here we have Office 365. I have links where you can sign up for Office 365, and I'll provide the links later. And under Office 365, we have the app launcher. Here we will find all the apps like Power Apps, Power Automate, and SharePoint are today's focus. So I'll be opening the SharePoint. So when you open the SharePoint for the first time, we'll see an interface like this. We can go and create a new SharePoint site. So I'll create a Teams site where I'll give a site name. I can keep this site as private or public. If I make it as public, it will be available for everyone within the organization. So I'll click on next. I can add members to the site if required. So when you create a site for the first time, this is how the interface will look like. I'll start creating a list based on this schema. First, I'll create a department list. I'll take it as blank list. If I select this show in site navigation, it will be displayed here in the left side. We can start adding columns to the department list now. To add columns, we can click on this settings icon and we can go to list settings. By default, we have the title column created. So, and it is marked as required. So I'll not make it as mandatory, I'll make it as optional. So to make it as optional, I can click on no here. because I'll not be using the title column. I'll start adding the department columns now. I'll create a new column here. And I'll give it a name as department ID. I'll keep it a single line of text because it can either have a concatenated text and a number or just a number. So I'll just keep it as a single line of text for now. And then I'll create a department name column. I can mark this as required if needed, either from SharePoint or from Power Apps also. Now we have these two columns created here, and it will show in this interface under department. We can see this one here. We can hide this title column if required because we are not using it anymore, and we have an ID column by default. The ID gets generated for every item, and we also have the created column. This column shows the user like what time the record was created, and a modified column, it shows like what time it was modified. Created by and modified by also shows who created it and who modified it. I can start entering the data to this list by clicking on new. I can hide this title from this form as well by clicking on this edit columns and just unchecking the title and click on save, and it will be removed from your form. You can give any department ID, and this is how you can see the details here. For the first record, ID1 has been generated automatically, and whatever we populated is displayed here. Created by and modified by is also shown here. And if I add second record, we can also see that the ID2 is generated for record 2. We'll go and create the students list now. It's not allowing me to create here. I mean, the button is disabled somehow. Oh, that's so strange. Let me hard refresh it. For some reason, this create button is not getting enabled. This has actually never happened before. I'm not sure why.
So Sumaira, I think that is, something strange with SharePoint. I can also see, the button is not getting
Yes.
enabled. Can you try
Yeah.
entering some description as a hidden trial if that works? Description for your list.
Uh, okay.
Like
Yep,
when
yep.
you go to classroom list.
No,
Maybe check
actually.
uncheck this checkbox. Yeah, I'm just, just something which
Yeah.
changes this page. Okay, now it's enabled.
Oh, okay. Even if I check it, it's getting enabled now. Something
Yeah,
was strange
maybe
there.
something with due to caching, I think. But please continue.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah. So, I'll create a new student list here. And I can also add columns here from here directly. For department, we clicked on settings and we navigated to list settings and then we started adding it. But here we can also start adding columns here. Like for this, I'll take, for example, first name, and I'll leave this data type as single line of text, and I'll click on save. You can see that the first name is created there. Similarly, I'll add a column for last name and then for full name, and then I'll add a date of birth column. I'll select date and time in this case, and I'll select, yeah, the data type as date and time. If I want, I can include time, or just because I need date, so I'll just keep it as date here. Age, I'll make this as a number column. Gender, this one I'll keep it as choice, and I can enter the choice here, like, I can also change its color from here. I can set this default value here. Either I can set it as male or female, but I'll leave it as none for now. Similarly, we can add the phone, email, and address fields. Okay, it's already added. And here our email field. For address, I'll make it as multiple line of text. And for department name, Before that, I'll create a register number field. A department name, it will be actually looking up to this particular list, the department name of department list. So we can make it as a lookup, and it will show this sources. I'll select as department, and from department, the department name field will be our target. And we also have a person or group field in SharePoint. So I'll select the person field. This one, it will actually look the data, the users directly from Azure. We can find all these columns here. We just added these columns, and I'll make title as optional. So we have added this department and the student list. Now we will take a look into how we can order these fields here in for this list in SharePoint. We can add the ID column if required, and we can reorder these fields here. We can show and hide the columns as well. When we reorder this, it will be arranged in that particular order. So this was about SharePoint, and here we can also store the documents under the document library. We can upload documents here. And coming to Power App, so we have the app launcher in almost every product here. So when I click on this app launcher, it will show me the apps listed here. I can click on Power App, and this is the interface where we can start exploring Power Apps and other uh, sources like model driven apps, and even Power Automate. We can navigate from here. So coming to the very first thing, we can directly start building an app by using the SharePoint as the data source, or Dataverse, Excel, or even SQL. So because we have created the SharePoint lists, I'll click on SharePoint, and we can see that the app is getting automatically created here. So my target data source is SharePoint, and because I'm using SharePoint online, I'll connect to cloud services, and I'll click on create. This one will show me the list of sites here in the right side. We can also enter the site URL here. We can go to home, get the URL, and enter the site URL. When we click on go, we will have the lists here. I can select only one here, so I'll be selecting the student list and I'll click on connect. And we can see that we will have the view screen, create, edit screens automatically being created here. So if you see, we have this automatically got created for the student list which we selected. So we have the refresh option here. We can also sort it. We can create the details here. Like I can start entering something. And when I click on save, if you see here, we have even the view screen here. And the record has been created. We can change it further, but this was just to give an overview about how we can also create the app directly if in case of a single list. If we want to save the app, then we can click on file here, or we can also make use of control s and we can click on save. So we will jump to our main app now. Like I'm entering the uh, Power Apps Studio here again by creating a new blank canvas app. So I'll click on this new app and canvas, and I'll create it for tablet. When I click on create, a blank canvas will be available for me to start creating the application. And I can also click on save here to save the details. So we will start adding the data sources first. When I click on here, I can click on add data and I can connect to SharePoint from here. I can also enter the URL here and click on connect if the site is not displayed. Because we need only department and student, we will select that and add the data source. We can start adding the labels here. And yeah, first I'll add a label which will be like department details. Here I have to modify the text. We can also make it as bold here and align it. I can also change the font size and give some background color for it. I can also change the text color here. We already have few items in department, so I can link that with the help of gallery. When I click on gallery, I'll take a vertical gallery and I'll link it to department list. I can change this gallery list actually. We don't need the image. Title is enough, and or subtitle and title is enough for us. So I'll make it as subtitle and title, and I'll change it to department ID. And for this one, I'll make it as department name. I'll give a background color to this gallery. So here under items property, we have to add the source, the list name here. Further filtering, sorting, and those kind of things are also done for gallery under items property. We can see the list of properties here in the left side, and here we can keep adding the labels further. So to get the particular field value or the column value, we can retrieve it using the this item dot fun- function. So when I click on this item dot, it will start populating the field's name to me there. I can also add a form here to start entering the data or editing the details. I have to also attach this form to the data source, to the department data source. By default, the attachments will get added. We don't need attachments for department list, so I'll remove it. And we can change the columns here. Like if we want these things to fit in one or two columns, we can make it available in that way. We can also change its layout, like we can make it as horizontal or vertical, like it will come up in this way. I'll keep it as vertical with two columns. To create the department details, I'll add an icon. This will be a plus icon here. I took it from here, and I'll add a save icon. I can also search here. We can drag the elements there to its position. I'll give some background for this form so that we can differentiate. And here, um, now when I click on play, it will show me as no item to display. But when I click on this left element here, the gallery, it should actually show me the data for that particular selected row. So what I'll do is first I'll see that this form is in edit mode, and I'll take this gallery name. I can rename the gallery here. I'll name it as department gallery, and I'll take its name. And here on the item property of the form, I'll make it as gallery name dot selected, so that it starts showing the data whatever we select from this gallery. If you see, by default it is showing the first one. When I select the second one, it will show me the second one. And I can also modify this. First we will see the new create operation here. I'll take the form name from here, like I'll rename it to department form, and on this click of this plus icon, and on select property of this plus icon, I'll make it as a new form, so that it comes up as a new form here. And if you see, this is a new form now. I can also add submit form function here. so that I can save the data. Actually, the submit form is used to save the data uh, to the SharePoint. Not only the SharePoint, actually, it can be used for other sources as well, but here we are using it as SharePoint. So I'll give some department ID and name. And when I click on save, the data should get added here. If you see, the data has got added here, and even in SharePoint it will be updated under departments. So this was the create and save part. Now we will edit this form. To make this as editable, I'll on select of this gallery, I'll make it as an edit form, and I'll give the form name here. So when I click on this, and if I suppose I click on the first one, if I change it to computers, and when I click on save, it will get updated as computers from CS. So this was the first thing about department. And I can also rename the screens here. I'll copy this icon and make it as a student kind of a user icon there, so that I can navigate to student screen. On click of this, I'll navigate to a new screen which we have not created actually. I'll add another screen here, a blank screen, and I'll name it as student screen. So when I click on this, it should navigate to student screen. We can navigate to different screens by using the navigate function. We can also specify some properties there for uh, like it will fade when it navigates, it comes up as it is fading, or so on. There are lots of properties there. And when I go to next screen, I'll copy the label here because it already has the background color and all, and I'll make it as student details. And here I'll add a data table. Data table and gallery are similar. Even with the help of gallery, we can see the list of items, and with the help of data table also, we can connect this to the student data source, and we can keep the columns which we need. If you see here, the details from the students are coming up here. We have to add the filter function as well here, but before that I'll add the CRUD uh, operations form. So I'll copy the icons from previous screen and paste here in this screen. We don't need the save button here, but we need a plus icon and a home icon here. I'm pasting the icons because it has the colors and all set already. So, and I can make it as not save, actually home. We have different icons here. So this home icon will navigate to screen department screen with the help of navigate function. When I click on home, it will take me to this screen. Now coming to the third screen where we will have most of the validations, I'll add another screen and give it some name. I'll copy this header again and I'll make it as a student form. I'll add an edit form here and connect to students data source. I can select this one and click on delete, and it will delete all the required columns. I can also change its width or height by just dragging it. So we have this edit form here. To navigate to previous screen from where we just entered this screen, I'll make use of a back button. I'll change its color and I'll make this as back icon. And on select of this one, I can enter a back function. So with the help of this, it will take me back to the screen from where I came from. It is actually BACK and this function called brackets. So yeah, I can't go to this screen currently from with the help of student screen because it is not linked. But what we can do is on click of this, like on select of this, I can first we need to click on one of the column from the data table. Then we will go to its on select property, and then here we will give it as edit form of whatever the form name is. So the form name for students is form 2, so we will make it as edit form of form 2, and then we will navigate to the form screen for students. I'll run this app, and when I click on this, it should take me to the next screen. Oh, sorry, it's actually going to the current screen. It is student form screen. Yeah. So now when I click on this, it will take me to the student form screen because this data table and this form is not linked currently. So what I'll do is just like how I did here, uh, I added department gallery dot selected under department form. I'll make it as data table name is data table 1 here. So I'll go to this form and its item property, and I'll make it as data table 1 dot selected so that whatever details we select there will start showing up here, and we can further edit it. Now because we have the edit functionality, like it is not editable currently, but we can go to edit mode currently. So we can click on this plus icon and make the student form 2, which is form 2, as the new form so that it enters into new mode. and navigate to the student screen, student form screen actually. So when I do this, it will go to this screen. It will come to this screen. And I can also add a save button here so that we can save the details. I'll copy same button and I'll change its icon, and on select of this I'll make it as submit form of form 2 because we want to submit the student form. So, and yeah, so with the help of this, yeah, now we can see the back button in action. When I click on back, it will go to its previous screen. And when I click on plus, I can start entering data again. First name and last name. Okay, so here it is added, but it didn't go back to this screen. This I mean the current screen where I'm. So once it saves, it should come back to its previous screen. So what we can do is we can go to this screen again, and we will have on success property. So here we can give a back function. So as soon as it submits, it will go back to its previous screen. So now when I enter this again, and suppose I am editing the details for this user, I'll add the gender and department name. And when I click on save, if you see here, it is like it is updated here. The gender is updated and even the department is updated. And we also came back to this screen. We will perform some validations here. Also, one more thing we can add here is as soon as it is successful, we can also notify the user with some message like it is success. And we have four types of notifications here for error, information, success, and warning. Because we are triggering it on success, I'll uh, take the success notification type. For first user, if I give some department and save, we can see that this success notification is popping up here. And yeah, we'll go to the screen, and I want my register number to be automatically added. So what I'll do is, first thing I can drag these things here, like I can rearrange. Now the register number will be on top. Before that, we can also take up another validation, another calculation like full name. We have the full name. When I enter first name and last name, both should be concatenated and shown in the full name. So what I'm doing here is I'll click on this data card first. This card was locked, so I unlocked it by clicking here, clicking, going to advanced and just clicking on that. And on the default property of this data card, I'll go here first. Let me take the data card value for this first name. So it is data card value 5. dot text, because it is a text field, so it will come as dot text. So whatever I enter in first name now, it will come up here under this, like even that will be captured here. But if I do same thing for last name, it will not come. So what I have to do is I have to also get the data card name for last name, which is data card value 6. I should go to the same default property, and I can enter this symbol, and I have to open and close the double quotes with a space in between. I have to open and again, and enter the data card value for last name and dot text. So if you see now, like whatever I have in this field also is displaying here. So at the end, whatever we have here will be displayed. Because this is a calculated field, I can make it as a disabled field, so it has its values automatically. So I'll go to the display mode, and I'll make its mode as disabled, so that user should not edit it, because it is a calculated field. I'll make it as display mode dot disabled. We have three different modes. One is we can just view, and another will come up as disabled, and the third is edit by default. So if you see, this is disabled. The entire data card got disabled actually. This display mode, we will have this property on the data card as well as this particular field as well, this particular card as well. So I'll make it as editable, like just so that its text is displayed. And for this particular input field, I'll go to its display mode here, and I'll make it as disabled. So now this is there, but this one is disabled. So this is the first calculation, and now when I click on save, third record is created, and full name has its concatenated value. And coming to another calculation for register number, um, whenever I create a new item, so it should get incremented based on the previous saved ID. So for this one, I'll go to its default property, and I'll give it some prefix like for example some ABC, so that ABC and hyphen, and we need and to enter some um another text or something, so it appears in this way. But this is not the right use. I mean, I can also add the one here, but because we will be having the dynamic value here, so I have just taken it in this way. Now on visible of the screen, what I will do is I'll go to on visible, and I'll get the last saved record, which last record ID which is in SharePoint. Here we have the last ID as 3. So I'll set a variable here. I'll give some name for variable, and to get the last record, I'll make use of the last function, and I'll enter the data source, like from the students list I need the last record, and I'll get its ID. Yeah, so I'll get its ID. Now whenever currently I can't see anything here because it is blank, and it is on visible actually. So we have to enter this screen in order to see the variable value. So the last ID was 3, and now I need 4 here whenever a new item is created, because we already have 3. Now I need the value as 4 here, abc hyphen 4. So what I'll do is I'll increment this by 1 by making use of sum function, sum of uh, this id. I already have this id here, comma 1. And now the var id should have the value as 4. I have to enter this screen again to see the value. If you see, we have this 4 here. Now I'll take this var my id, and then I'll go to this new uh, form mode, and I'll replace this 1 with var my id so that it shows as abc4. And when I create a new record now, so when I save it, this abc4 will get added here, and now it keeps incrementing now. Like, now when I create a new record, if you see here, we have abc5, it has incremented some random values. I'll enter, and here if you see, we have abc5. So this is the second validation. I can make this one as disabled as well, because uh, we don't have to edit the calculated values. So somehow it got saved. Okay, so display mode dot disabled. So even this is disabled now, and this one actually should happen in form new mode. Like, the id should not increment always. This should happen only when the form is in new mode. So what else what will happen is, every time you edit this, it will start showing wrong values there based on its previous id, based on the last previous id. So I'll click on this, and I'll just take this form name. So I'll go to this card input field, and I'll check a condition like, if the form2 dot mode is equal to form mode dot new. If it is in new mode, only then it should change, else it will show its default value if it is in editor view mode. So I'll make it as parent.default. Parent.default shows whatever the value is there in its source. So that one. We also have the attachments field here. Here, attachments input here. We can also upload the attachments if required. It will be stored directly under the list here. Um, Going back to this students list, when I click on add column, show or hide columns, we don't have to add these attachments, it will by default be there. I just have to check this and get those attachments, um, show that attachment column here. So I'll go to this app, and yeah, so one more thing we can do here is calculating the age automatically. So based on the input we select here. So what we can do for that is, again we have to select this input, go to advanced, unlock this card, and then we can go to its default property, and I have to get this card name for date of birth, which is data card value 8, and I can calculate the date difference. I have to get the age based on the target input here, and today's date. So it should be the difference. So there is a formula like we can enter date diff of our start date will be whatever we enter under date of birth. So that data card name is data card value 8, and here we will have the selected date um, property. So we will select as data card value 8 dot selected date, and then we will add the end date, that will be today's date. We have this today date function, and in terms of years we will take this, like we can also get number of days, hours, milliseconds and all, but we will take in terms of years. So here I'll make this as calculated again. Sorry, display mode will be disabled again because it is calculated.
Hey Sumaira, sorry to interrupt. Just wanted to give you
Yeah,
a quick time check.
yeah, please.
Okay, so we have like a couple of minutes left from our allotted time, but that's fine if you want to
Okay,
continue for a few minutes. You can complete the
okay,
demo and then we can take questions.
yeah, sure, sure. Yeah.
Okay, please continue.
S- Okay, so we have the date of birth here, and then if I select, for example, some 2007, some date, this age will be calculated automatically. And because we have limited time, I can add this person um, column, like it is looking up to Azure actually. So I'll go to this department name and select the department. So we have these things now. So we will quickly take a look into filters. We have the text input here. So to filter this one based on text, I'll make it as the hint text will be filtering based on full name, because we'll be filtering it based on full name. Yeah, and I'll add one drop down. I'll make it as I'll take this drop down for filtering the gender. So in order to get the choices, I'll go here and I'll go under properties and get this one. So when I add it here, that formula, it will show up the gender details automatically from SharePoint. And yeah, so coming to the student gallery, student data table, here I'll filter this table, filter student, and I'll filter it based on full name. So I'll take this text box name, which is text input one, and text input one dot text in full name. We are filtering it directly into the SharePoint column, which is full name. So when I try to search here, like for John, it will uh, show um, this one, these two records. And I can also further filter based on the gender or department name, whichever we have more data in. I think we have in department, so I'll change this to department. Think. All right, we can keep it as gender only because it's not changing. So I'll go and make it as mail, and I'll save it. And I'll get this drop down name. I'll add comma so that I can filter the another column, which is gender. So gender dot value, because we have to put it as dot value because it is a drop down field. So is equal to drop down one dot selected dot value. So whatever we select in drop down, that will be filtered. So if I select female and if I select male, like if you see it's getting changed, we can improve this in a much better way also. But let me just walk you through Power Automate for now. And once I save this app, I have to publish this to make this available for other users as well. And I can also share this app directly by going to power apps, make.powerapps.com, and then I can find my app. I can see its versions here, and I can click on share, and I can add some other user from our organization. So their email ID should be added here, and either we can provide user or a co-owner permission for them. So that is how we can share, and we can directly run the app from here. So that is one thing. And here under flows, we have we can create a new flow here by clicking on new flow, and we have few types of flows, like automated cloud flow. If we take, we can specify the trigger directly from SharePoint. Like whenever an item is created, we can perform certain action by adding further steps. So that is the one thing we can also do. When a student item is created, we can send an email to mentor. So these kind of things can be done. And we have a send an email connector, the Office 365 Outlook connector. It will establish the connection with the Outlook, and we can also send emails by providing the from, to, and these kind of inputs from this previous step. So just I'll just give a little idea uh, without demonstrating it completely. Let me just go here. You can enter the custom value for the SharePoint site. It will load me my list names. I can pick the dynamic values from here. Because mentor field is looking up directly from Azure, I can add the mentor email here, and I can add whatever subject I want. So now whenever I create something in SharePoint, uh, either from Power App or SharePoint, it will send an email to this mentor. So yeah, those are the things. And we have some resources here, like we can sign up for Microsoft developer account using this link, and we can also sign up for Office 365 trial or paid version uh, uh, to explore these applications. We have the uh, official Microsoft documents link here for Power Apps. And yeah, thank you.
Wow, Sumaira, that was so cool. I mean, if you're a beginner and you see this demo, I think there's nothing else you require to see, because you covered almost everything about how to create an app, what functions to use, how to set up UI, etc. So that was really cool.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
thanks. Thanks.
Okay, so we do have one question on the chat.
Okay.
It's like, I would like to create four similar columns in SharePoint, say like travel plan, wherein all four columns user has to give values where for an item column value should not match. Then the another message says it means no duplicates allowed, and I'm using Power Apps to edit and display.
Okay, so just let me take a look into the question.
Yes, so
Yeah, I see this. Like, I would like to create four similar columns in SharePoint. Okay, so they can make it as unique. Um, if they want to if they want to make use of SharePoint for columns, they can restrict, like they can enforce to only have unique columns in SharePoint. Like we have the option whenever we create a column in SharePoint, it will allow us. It will show us the options like enforce unique columns, so we can make it as unique in that way for columns if we want to make it from SharePoint. And if we want to make it happen from Power App, then we can make use of lookup function, and we can see if record has already been, I mean, if that particular value has already been entered in that column. So with the help of lookup function, if it we have to check the condition, like if it is already there, then we should not we should give some notification to user, and we should restrict it in that way.
okay, thank you, Sumaira. And Pavan, I hope that answers your question.
Column 2 should not allow. Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, I think that, what you said about the Power App, this should cover it. But Pavan, anyways, let us know in case there are any follow up questions you have for this one. Otherwise, if you want, you can reach out to Sumaira
Yes.
directly and. Okay, so
Yes.
Sumaira, maybe you want to check the latest message. Pavan
Yeah.
mentioned more details.
In Power App, data card 2 value should not mold into data card 1. Okay, so the same thing can be done for with the help of lookup function. Like if there is some, suppose your data card 2 column name is some first name, and data card value 1 column name is some last name. So you can, with the help of lookup function, you can check the if condition, and do it further. I would also be happy to resolve it personally uh, by connecting directly, if it is okay.
Okay, so Sumaira, I have
Yeah.
shared your LinkedIn on the chat earlier. So, Pavan,
Okay.
if you want, you can reach out to her directly. But, okay, all right, we got the confirmation. So, we're good. Any other questions at this point of time? Okay, Sumaira. So with that, I don't think we have any other questions. But attendees, if you have any questions for Sumaira, please reach out to her personally, and she'll be happy to answer those. Other than that,
Yeah.
Sumaira, is there anything you would like to share with the group?
Yeah, actually, this was my very first speaking session online, and it was quite well. And thank you for providing me the opportunity to be a part of this.
No problem. Thank you, Sumaira. I mean, I really enjoyed the demos you were doing with explaining each and every item. So I'm glad that, we had you here and we were able to, get such insightful session from you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Sumaira. So, with that, everybody, that was Sumaira Noor. And in case you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to her. And with that, we come towards the end of our meetup today, where we talked about the machine learning with Power BI, and then we saw a nice use case of building a student management system with the help of Power Apps, Power Automate, and SharePoint. Again, we'll meet next month with several other topics and some interesting insights on Power Platform. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me or Yash. And if you want to present something in one of our coming meetups, then also you can reach out to both of us. And we will be happy to, have you here and create a platform for everybody where they can share their knowledge and interact with a larger audience. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And we will meet next month. Bye bye.